Welcome back. Well, with the concrete all done and cured to a point where I could use the scissor lift on there, it was time to get this roof done. Now I've decided to use a thermal break product from Metalin, and it's about 8 millimeters thick, foil both sides, and it creates a thermal break between the metal cladding and the steel frame. The other thing it does is it eliminates or greatly reduces any creaking you get with temperature that sometimes happens in metal style buildings. We tape it together and we decide to tape this on the ground because, after doing this, it's a much easier way to go. In the first instance, I actually taped 7 of these together all at once. It was about 10 meters long. And to be honest, it worked. But after this one, we toned it down a bit and we started taping 3 or 4 sections together and then just taping the one join up on the roof. So roll it out. The silver side goes to the inside, and there's like a duller finish on the other side that points outwards, and it's pretty easy. The duller finish has the Metalin branding on it, so that is something you don't see after. The other thing I decided to do on the ground is bend the ends of the sheets up. So this is the end of the sheet, which is at the ridge end, and you do this just to stop debris or leaves or whatever blowing in there when there's strong winds. So you can do it on the roof, but I think it's much easier to do it while it's on the ground. Sheets start going up. I'll start on the lean-to because that way, once I do the lean-to, I've got something to stand on to do the main roof. And I put a few sheets up at a time, and you can see this string line that I'm using just to align the edge and make sure it's square. And I'm simply just putting 2 screws on each end of each sheet just to hold it. Where the sheets overlap, you do need to face them against the weather so that the overlap is in a way that the rain can't get under the sheet. Now here's another look at the taping. Highly recommend using the Metalin tape, which is here. It's great tape. It's very forgiving and it sticks really well. I think you'll run into problems if you try to use duct tape or some other cheaper option. So definitely that tape was amazing stuff. At this point, we had most of the lean-to done and a bit over half of the one side of the main roof. And you can see here, I made this bracket up for the main roof that was much easier. So it's out of a bit of C-section, and I'll show you the detail of that a bit later. And it just makes lining the sheets up super easy. So slowly progressing. It's a massive job. It's really incredible. I mean, unless you see it, it's hard to get your head around how much work's involved here. So this is 22 meters long, and the entire workshop's about 13 meters wide. And you can see I've just got the series of bolts just in the bottom as well as the top, just to hold them down for now until the whole roof's on. Now doing the other side was against my hillside, and I needed to be a bit careful there because there was a bit of a drop off. So I bought some safety gear. I harnessed that up to the main column, and I've got a safety harness on. And you also notice the Metalin does not have a gap at the ridge. So I've fully sealed this. It is a vapor barrier, but I want to seal this up as tightly as I can. And you can see the bent up lip all the way down. So at this point, the lean-to's done, one side of the main roof done, and the other side's half done. And in South Australia, Adelaide, we cop some bad weather, and this really did test those 4 screws that was holding each sheet. And then if it wasn't the wind, we had heavy rains as well, and it was great for my rainwater tank, but just delayed this a little bit, which was a bit of a pain. While I had the time, I finished off the power room, and it's a separate little room where I'll put my fuse board and a few other things in there. I'm just putting the fascia on, and you see with this fascia, it actually lines up to follow the same slope as the roof, and you can just see it here. So the fascia just follows exactly that, and the iron goes 50 millimeters further than the end of the fascia, so it sits in the gutter. And here's this bracket I made just to make that process a lot easier. So that's exactly 50 mils to that flat bar, which I welded on, and I simply clamped it on the fascia and just moved it along as we went applying the roof. This is the last bit of a Metalon going on, and I was glad to see the end of this job, to be honest. So you can see I've got the harness on this side, and this is just an example of taping up the join up on the roof. So I've got 3 sections already taped on the ground, and then obviously you need to tape it on the roof. Now I'm doing this because, as I said, I want this the best vapor barrier I can get. Once it's on there, I just cut it, trim to the end of my bracket, and you can see there's a little sag in the Metalon as well, which you do need because it creates the proper ventilation you need underneath that. Now, lifting sheets onto any roof can be a challenge, and you've got to improvise sometimes. And on this side, whilst I had a scissor lift, there was no way to get it onto that slope of the hill. So you can see we just used a bit of C-section, a bit of manhandling, and we rested up against that bracket, and then it's locked in. And the beauty of that bracket is it just sits there, so you can't really go too far wrong. All the effort I put into getting this workshop really nice and square paid off. These sheets lined up perfectly square. I had no cutting to do whatsoever other than the very last sheet. So very happy with the way this turned out. I use like a center pop that's just automatic thing, just to put a little dimple there. And here's the last sheet going up. And then after that, I just trimmed off that last bit of Metalon, and that was basically it. The next stage was putting all the screws in, and this roof needed about 2,500 screws, so it took a good solid couple of days. And you can see I use a string line. Start with just 2 screws on each end of the sheet, and then once they were all locked down, I put all of the remaining screws in. And for these, I did pre-drill, and I think this just makes it a bit easier. It takes a bit longer, but you've got much less chance of slipping. And when you put the screws in, obviously you don't want to over tension them, so they just screw down until the rubber washer starts to compress slightly. And there it is there with all the screws in. Now the ridge cap is not fully tied down just yet because I'm going to put a solar system on very soon, and I need access under that ridge cap, so I'll do that a bit later. And here's what it looks like underneath. Any questions or comments, put them down below, and I'll see you in the next video.